All right. Hello, people of YouTube land, those that are part of the Cringe Crew community Discord, those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, and people that are listening to this on Spotify or whatever audio streaming service we decide to put this on. I am Traductus.
And I'm Ted.
And this is the Cringe Crew Gaming Movie Review Podcast, where we take a director's filmography and we go through it, and then we rank the films. We do likes and dislikes. Ted also talks about the plot, and that's all there is to it. So we are doing Tarantino, of course, and we are reviewing Jackie Brown. All right, so Jackie Brown, released in 1997, based on the novel Rum Punch. Wow, I didn't even know that was a fucking novel. Based on a novel. Released in the Ziegfeld Theater in December 8th, 1997, and then released in the rest of the United States in December 25th, 1997. Had a budget of $12 million. The box office return of $74.7 million. This movie pays homage to the 70s blaxploitation films, particularly the movies Coffee and Foxy Brown, both starring Pam Grier, who stars in this as Jackie Brown. We also have Samuel Jackson as Ordell Robbie, Robert Forster as Max Cherry, Bridget Fonda as Melanie Ralston, Michael Keaton as ATF agent Ray Nicolette, Robert De Niro as Louis Gara. Chris Tucker's also in this as Beaumont Livingston. Tommy Tiny Lister Jr. as Winston. If you don't know who he is, that's Debo from the Friday series. Also, we have Sig Haig as a judge, who's Captain Spaulding. Tarantino makes a voice cameo on an answering machine.
Dude, stop writing yourself into fucking movies. God damn it.
And we'll go into development here for casting. Right off the bat, and by the way, apparently Tarantino changed the ethnicity of the main character from white to black, also renaming her from Jackie Burke to Jackie Brown, and wanted Pam Grier to play the title character right off the bat. She read previously for Pulp Fiction for the character Jody, but like I said before, Tarantino didn't think that it would be believable for Eric Stoltz to yell at her. Grier did not expect Tarantino to contact her after Pulp Fiction, and when she showed up to read for Jackie Brown, Tarantino had the posters of her films in his office, so he was a huge fan of hers, and this movie revived her career. After several years after the release of the movie, Sylvester Stallone claimed that he turned down the role of Louis Gara. Tarantino also considered Paul Newman, Gene Hackman, or John Saxon for the role of Max Cherry before casting Robert Forster. Apparently, Michael Keaton was hesitant to take the part of Ray Nicolette, even though Tarantino wanted him for it. Apparently, there's actually a sequel to this, kinda. Keaton reprises the character in the movie Out of Sight, which he is uncredited, and he appears in one brief scene. Although the legal rights to the character were held by Tarantino and Miramax, as Jackie Brown had been produced first, Tarantino insisted the studio did not charge Universal for using the character in Out of Sight. Although the character's appearance was allowed to be in that movie without Miramax receiving financial compensation. There was controversy through Jackie Brown for the use of the N-word, which is used 38 times, which is the most of any Tarantino film until Django Unchained and Hateful Eight.
Kind of surprising, but not really.
And the filmmaker Spike Lee criticized the film's use of the word. He goes, "I'm not against the word, and I use it, but not excessively." And some people speak that way, but Quentin Tarantino is infatuated with that word. What does he want to be made? An honorary black man, and he uses it in all of his pictures. Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. I want Quentin Tarantino to know that African Americans do not think that word is trendy or slick. So
we'll cover this again.
And also film critic Pasco Sorus said, "It seems to me there's kind of a culture vulture feel to this movie." Due to the blaxploitation thing. Unfortunately, since I came unprepared and Wikipedia is not telling me, I have no clue how the hell Robert De Niro got casted in this and why he was chosen for the part.
I have a theory.
I feel like, might as well kill time to see if I could find that on his fucking
Yeah, I have a theory, and it's the delivery of one line that they wanted to make sound like De Niro. But yeah, I'll cover plot while you're looking.
Yeah.
So Jackie Brown is basically a smuggler, I guess. She's collecting money for weapons trade for Samuel L. Jackson's character, and then it's kind of a I don't want to say quite a heist, but it's basically a way to escape the ATF, get Samuel L. Jackson's money for herself, and get away with the whole thing. Basically, that sums it up.
Yeah, and I haven't found a single fucking thing about Robert De Niro, so we're gonna have Ted's theory the whole way.
Perfect.
So I guess we'll get into likes and dislikes. Where do you want to go first?
I think it's easier to start with dislikes. It's a pretty short list. It's just it's a list.
And both of ours actually kind of cross over on that shit.
Yeah, we talked about this a bunch yesterday, so we're kind of just rehashing the after movie conversation we had. Okay, this movie is incredibly black, right? As you said, the culture vulture thing is absolutely real. Tarantino is
by the way, we're not saying that that's a bad thing. We're saying that Tarantino directing a black film is kind of a little sus.
Tarantino doing it is a bad thing, but it was also like very clearly written by a white man to be such a black film. Like, the first half of this movie is, boy, this feels like a black film. Why is De Niro here? Right? And like, Max's character doesn't bother me necessarily being white. I feel like it's a very staunch, dry role that, like, I feel like they would have underwritten the character had they made all of the characters black, right? Like, it doesn't fucking De Niro bothers the shit out of me. There is no universe in which Robert De Niro as that character is ever going to interact with a black person. It's not going to happen. Like, but I'm telling you, they cast him for the delivery of one line right before he gets shot in the fucking car because they wanted that particular sentence to sound like how De Niro would deliver it.
The irony to that is that I'm pretty sure that the majority of the women that De Niro has dated are black.
Again,
married.
His character in the movie, not De Niro himself. I'm not calling De Niro a racist. I'm calling Tarantino a racist. Yeah, you mentioned the blaxploitation area. All right, I'm going to try that one again.
I will say this: I could see why Tarantino is a fan of those movies because a lot of those movies are very underrated. However, a lot of them were very, very, very much of their time.
Well, and also a lot of them like had black influence to them. Not Tarantino wrote this character, imagined black people would make it cooler, and he could say the N-word more and get away with it. Right? Like,
right.
It's just kind like it also kind of bothers me that like he's like, all right, this is my third movie. Let's make a black film. Let's watch someone do crime. Who's the perfect person to cast for someone doing crime? I know. Let's make them all black, right? Like, maybe I'm stretching here, right? And maybe it's just body of work kind of thing. But Tarantino kind of feels like a piece of shit for writing this. It's not a good film. It's not an inherently racist film. It's the premise of Tarantino doing it this way after the previous two, and the concept that goes into this movie with a guy like Tarantino writing it makes him feel like a scumbag.
Yeah. I mean, at least we don't have Tarantino going into the diatribe, and it is just black characters that are saying it. But
and you know,
but the fact that he wrote the script that way is kind of, is like, eh.
Well, and you know the crazier part too, right? Is we know that the only two things on earth that get Tarantino off are feet and seeing himself in his own movies, right? Like, if he had cast himself in De Niro's place, right? Like, just to stroke his dick and he had to fit in somewhere, right? I feel like it's less racist.
Well, it would be nice to see him get shot by a Samuel L. Jackson.
True.
Near the end.
True. But no, I feel like genuinely would be less racist because it's just like, okay, well, it's not like you replaced a black character. You just wanted to see yourself. It would feel less bad to cast himself for that role. But the idea that he chose De Niro, of all fucking people, it's really hard to get over that.
De Niro does a bad job whatsoever, like what he's given.
He's fine, but it's very clearly like, hey, we've got this really black movie. Who's the perfect person to cast alongside black people that make it feel like somebody that would naturally fit into the flow of this movie? I know, The Irishman, right? Like. It just, you feel it from literally the first time De Niro has a speaking line. You're like, all right, De Niro's out of fucking place. And he just sticks out like a sore fucking thumb the whole damn movie. It's not that he's bad. I think he does a really good job, to be honest with you.
He is supposed to be kind of a fish out of water because he's out of his depth in this because he's been in prison for so long.
Well, and I get it, but they don't need to just put a neon sign on his fucking head like, hey, remember this guy? He's white. Like, it just, and they do it by casting De Niro. Maybe I'm overreaching because of the body of work and the fact that Tarantino cast himself into a role to say the N-word at Samuel L. Jackson's face in the last movie, right? Like maybe it's a body of work and maybe I'm going too far on this one individually, but like man, this one sits poorly.
Yeah.
As for the downsides of the movie itself, my dislikes, one of the things that this movie does not do well is it's got a very slow build. Right?
Yeah, this movie does not need to be 2.5 hours long. Like, there could be a half-hour cut out of it. Although we understand why it wasn't, but at the same time, some stuff looks like it could have been told in a different way, so that way it wasn't so slow.
It like all of the pieces of this movie are exciting. Right? Like if you were to boil down the plot into a 5-minute synopsis, right? Like you were writing a newspaper column. There's not a point in time in this movie where it becomes uninteresting. It's just that it develops so goddamn slowly, right? Take for example,
it's kind of similar to like Barry Lyndon. Like
kind of, but I think this movie's better than Barry Lyndon, right? But like take the first scene or the first sequence, I guess, more than the first scene, right? Samuel L. Jackson talks to Max Sherry, right? He bonds his guy out of prison. He goes to this guy's house, recognizes that he's, experiencing a cost deficit because of this guy, takes him puts him in the trunk of his car, telling him he needs help, drives him to somewhere relatively isolated, shoots him in his trunk and drives away.
Which is just the street, which is just the empty lot down the street.
Right. It's not like it's far. It's just quiet enough that it's not his front door, right? And look, I get
it is kind of hilarious that it is Chris Tucker.
The idea that scene has to happen to set up the danger, like who Samuel L. Jackson's character is and how Jackie Brown is potentially in danger as the main character. The scene is important. It doesn't need to be 17 minutes long.
Right?
Right. Like
they spend about a good 10 minutes of Chris Tucker arguing with Samuel L. Jackson about getting in the fucking trunk. And granted, it's not too far-fetched, but at the same time, it's like, you know, Chris Tucker's getting in that fucking trunk one way or the other, so...
And also, like, to give a character that many lines, right, to literally murder him 45 seconds later, right, is just kind of unnecessary, right? You could take it, you could demonstrate that scene, you can set the tone very early on, and then it's over with, rather than, I've been here for 20 minutes, and now I feel like this is super important, when it's only relevant again to, like, set up how Jackie Brown's at risk, you know?
I also want to say that I'm kind of getting over... Usually I'm kind of excited for Tarantino with, like, the trunk shot, because I think, like, that's really cool and unique. But this is, like, the third movie in a row. If I keep on seeing it, I'm going to try to find, like, a YouTube video of just all of his films with the trunk shot and just have a drink every time there's a trunk shot. You know?
I mean, we know directors have their things, and part of that is a pitfall of, like, watching the director back to back to back to back to back, right? Like,
right, as we learned with Kubrick really quickly.
Well, there are a lot of issues with Kubrick, but I'm kind of with you to an extent, like just the corny fucking tropes, right? The idea that, like,
or like James Bond, like a lot of the, like, if we would have watched him, like, not just like right after the bat. After that, we wouldn't have pointed out, like, several tropes that were there, like, you know, through the Connery ones, where the majority of them happen, you know, ended on a fucking boat.
Right. Like, I know that in every single movie, Tarantino's going to find an excuse to have a close-up on some woman's feet. I know that he's going to put himself in every movie. I know that he's going to have the trunk shot, right? Like, I know all of these are Tarantino things, right? And they don't bother me nearly as bad when they're isolated. Like, part of that I recognize is because we're just watching them in sequence. But, like, also, if this is your sequential work to do it, maybe you should consider that you're bored with your own tropes and do something different, you know?
Yeah. And we haven't really seen, you know, the rest of the films, like, in a while, so, like, I haven't, you know, I can't really... Although I think Kill Bill 2 does have a trunk shot, but I'm not sure if Kill Bill 1 does.
We'll cross this bridge again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Some other small takeaways. I think that there's a point in time as you're a little beyond halfway in the movie where you're still kind of questioning people's motives. In particular, Jackie Brown herself, right?
Yeah, especially if whether she's using Max or not.
Well, partially in the idea of, is she trying to rob Samuel L. Jackson? Is she trying to get out with her life? Is she trying to help the ATF? Is she trying to get with Max? Is she, like, it's very ambiguous as to what the end goal for some of the characters are, and they all kind of line up together. And it's not like in a stereotypical heist movie where it's how do they get away with it? It's okay, but what's the point? It's right.
What is actually going on? What is the heist?
Right. It's not a negative, like, to the same extent as the other couple I've had, but I do think that it does make the movie feel kind of long and redundant, for lack of a better word.
Because like at the beginning, you're just like, well, why does Max have to be in this? And then, you know, as soon as the movie gets farther on, you understand, but at the same time, it's like, does it need to really take that far into the movie to understand how everybody fits into this whole entire thing?
Well, yeah, and like Max being involved, I think, is just the same thing, right? Is that you have to question the motive. Like, what does Max get out of this, right? He talks about quitting his job. He helps Pam Grier when she's the 15,000th person he's bonded out, right? Like, why does he want to go up against the ATF? Why does he put himself in dangerous situations to then continue being a bail bondsman, right? Like,
I could actually answer that, and I'm pretty sure Ted could answer that, because the movie kind of answers that subtly.
Well,
kind of subtly.
Yeah, it's not ambiguous forever.
Pam Grier is hot as hell. That's why.
Right. Like, it doesn't stay ambiguous forever, right? But there's a big chunk of the movie where you're like, Max, what the fuck are you doing here, dude? Like, you're being an idiot, right? I think he
kind of understands that he is too. That's the funny thing about it.
Oh, he absolutely knows it. Yeah, it's the movie kind of is full of itself in a way, not in a bad way. Like this, it's not a dislike by any stretch of the imagination, but like the characters inside know when they are characters.
Yeah.
My only other big negative really is that they kind of put the white man in the position to play the hero. I think it's a little
Sort
bit.
of.
I think it's a little bit different than Tarantino's racism, right? But like.
Right.
The heist event does not happen without the help of the white man on several counts, right?
Yeah.
He goes unnoticed in the department store, right? He's able to carry the money with him. He is the bail bondsman that is in charge of people's bail and, you know, can set Samuel L. Jackson up to believe him before the ATF kills him, right? Like, it's very much a white man hero play, which feels like it undercuts the black movie that this is.
Right. But it does help that it is that the person moving the chessboard is Jackie Brown.
It does help, and like I said, it doesn't feel like Tarantino racism.
Yeah.
It just more feels like a blind spot in the idea that like, hey, you kind of set the white man up to be the hero, and all of these other important characters aren't white.
It's not as egregious as like Dances with Wolves, where you know it's a huge white savior complex.
Right, right. He is a plot device. It's Jackie Brown's doing, right? But it's Max. It doesn't happen without Max. Kind of the same way that Die Hard's a Christmas movie because the plot doesn't happen if it's not Christmas. It doesn't inherently make it fucking Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but like. Yeah,
it's still a Christmas movie.
Christmas is important in the movie. So, yeah, same kind of that threshold of white heroism for lack of a better word.
I hear a Christmas episode.
Ugh, dear God, dude. I don't want to watch Christmas movies like that, dude.
I was just having an excuse to review Die Hard, but
I mean, I could fuck around with Die Hard, but like
that was just it.
Yeah, I don't,
just Die Hard, nothing else.
Okay, good. I don't want to watch other Christmas movies.
The only other Christmas movie I'd watch would be Bad Santa, and that would be about it.
Oh, Jesus Christ! You have any other dislikes I missed?
No, not really, because that's really about. Those are the only dislikes that I really have, you know? Like...
No, send it with likes then. What you got?
The fucking characters in this are great.
Absolutely.
Like Samuel L. Jackson's ruthless as fuck. Honestly, I think for the two movies that we've seen Samuel L. Jackson in, and yes, he's going to be in like... I think he's basically in every... Tarantino film after this, for the most part.
Everyone,
I'm not sure if he's in Kill Bill 1. I know he's in Kill Bill 2. I can't remember if he's in Death Proof or not, but like the majority of everything else, he's pretty much in. And like, I love how like it's not even just like through like dialogue alone with his character, but like just like his like facial mannerisms when you know that he's about ready to fucking kill someone, because he has the same like cold-blooded pissed off look, and you see this like 3 or 4 times and you can pick it up where you're just like, oh, it just builds tension when he just has that look, like, you know, like 1 minute he's just like fine, joking, calm and everything, and then he has that look right away, and then you're just like, oh shit. Oh shit.
To that same extent, I think that the actors for the characters in this movie are very good. As much shit as I gave De Niro earlier, I think he's solid. Pam Grier's phenomenal in this. My God. For my money, the hardest thing it like the least believable an actor can ever be is acting like they don't know how to act. Right?
Right.
On multiple occasions, Pam Grier nails it. Like, there is not a moment of doubt. Even if you go looking for, that's not believable, or she does a bad, you cannot find it. Pam Grier nails it. Samuel L. Jackson, like you said, is the perfect person to play that character. The actors match the characters phenomenally. I don't know whether to attribute that more to the writing or to the actors themselves, but I think both parts have to be very good for it to feel this comfortable.
And Bridget Fonda does really well, too, even though she's, like, I mean, not so much a bit part, but like a supporting role, kind of like De Niro. Like, she even like plays the role very, very well and is 100% believable as well. Like, there isn't really an actor where I can really say like does a bad job in this.
Yeah, no, I can't think of it. I mean, there are times where Max is a little bit dry, but I don't think it's necessarily out of place. There's
Yeah, and Max is kind of dry to begin with, and even like Max is like some of his one-liners are fucking great.
the only scene that I can think of to discredit Max's character a little bit is when he comes out of the movie and runs into Jackie. Like, I don't believe that is a planned moment.
Right.
And like there, it's like he's supposed to look happy and surprised and whatever else, and it still just feels kind of dry. Like, it's form-fitting to the character, but it's the only place that man, these characters are really developed, kind of slips.
Yeah. Although I'll say my favorite line is like, well, he's in the car with Samuel Jackson, and it's like, hold on, I gotta find out what that group is. I know they talked about soundtrack, which we will talk about soundtrack because the soundtrack's fucking phenomenal in this. Oh, the Delphonics.
Yeah.
He's like, he's just like, never knew you liked the Delphonics. So he goes, yeah, they're pretty good. like deadpan,
stone
like, yeah,
faced.
they're pretty good. Even though like he just started listening to them because Jackie Brown played it, and he's just like, yeah, they're pretty like that stone face, like, yeah, they're pretty good. And he does this a couple other times, like especially when he's like figuring out how the plan works, and he's like following like the test thing. He's like, yeah, it could work as long as she plays the cops right. And it's just like little things like that is what makes this movie really, really enjoyable. Also, when Robert De Niro, how he progressively gets way over his head. Like at first he's like, yeah, I'm playing cool. It's like Odell's my friend. And then when the heist, thing happens, he's like sweating and shit and is like basically panicking because like he knows the type of person Odell is. They're fucking late because of Bridget Fonda being Bridget Fonda.
True.
And he just loses his shit completely. And the scene between him and Samuel Jackson just fucking yelling at each other is just amazing.
That's the one thing that like it was a big plus for me, that none of this feels unimportant, right? I think it's difficult to write 2.5 hours of content, and even though there are some places that drag, right? Like every line feels like it's delivered with a purpose, right? Even in Pulp Fiction, where I think the dialogue was very good, right? There were places that were like, okay, Samuel L. Jackson reading me a Bible verse for the second time is probably unimportant. I don't give a shit, right? Like,
right.
But in this movie, like everything feels like it has some value, and it's hard to do. And I give Tarantino some credit there that like that it for being such a long movie that still feels like it drags. There's not a part that you can confidently be like, yeah, cut that whole scene. It's not important.
Yeah, and also again with the acting, like I was saying before, everybody has like certain body language that just hits it right off the park. Not even just, I know people talk about like Tarantino and dialogue and how he has like great dialogue in scenes. Like the body language of the actors in this movie is like top notch because you read a hell of a lot more out of body language than you do from just dialogue.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes underrated, but I think it makes it feel more human, right? There's some movies that you watch that you can like, okay, that wouldn't happen in real life, right? Like if you really sit and process it. But because of the body language, like you mentioned, like these feel like genuine human interactions.
Especially at the end where you're not sure if like, I mean, yeah, like Jackie Brown kisses Max at the end and then they go their separate ways, but they also leaves like a thing of doubt of like, is Max going to leave his job and go to Jackie? Is Jackie actually going to turn the car around and go to Max?
Yeah.
And it's just done pure by body language.
And it's so human. It's not characters. It's not a script. It's not like the way things are supposed to happen for your perfect Hollywood ending. Like it's human.
I another thing that I really like is how this movie is almost kind of a metaphor for like age gap relationships because like Robert De Niro and Samuel L. Jackson are both fucking Bridget Fonda, who's a hell of a lot younger than both of them. And they also have conversations of like, liking, you know, either young women or worse, young girls. Cause like Samuel Jackson even mentions that he like, is like banging this 19-year-old and his character's probably like in his 40s.
He's got to be
Robert
older
De-
than that, I think.
Yeah, Robert De Niro's character knows Bridget Fonda's character from when she was like 14.
Still fucks her though.
Yeah. And it seems that any character that's manipulating another character successfully, it's always an older character manipulating a younger character. And if there isn't any manipulation that doesn't work, it's when they're kind of the same age or they're trying to manipulate someone that's older.
Man,
when it comes to like problematic, age gaps, especially like within pedophilia, it's always the older person manipulating someone younger until you get to like a point where shall we say like, around mid-30s or something like that, where the age gap doesn't really matter that much since you have like enough life experience where you kind of pick up on like, manipulation and, people not using anyone. Like literally like the only person that's not like, where like that age gap thing doesn't really like work out very well is like, Max isn't manipulating Jackie. If anything, Jackie might be manipulating Max to a point. Although she does say like, I never used you, Max. Maybe it's her trying to say, no, I feel bad, take more of the money, even though he's like, nah, like...
And she still kind of, like, halfway invites him to come with. Like,
right.
At least to come visit or whatever. To some extent, she invites him to continue. And we talked about this a little yesterday after the movie, and it's hard for me to buy in and agree. Like, I see why you say so, but it doesn't feel in your face enough to be intentional.
Right. I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but I'm kind of picking up that, like,
I guess for me, it just feels like, less about the age itself and more about the allure and the distraction. If you're gonna pull that metaphor, right?
Right.
Small young surfer blonde, right, is far more in your face than she's younger than them. Especially when age through most of it is pretty ambiguous, right? I mean, I think the only two ages that get specified for sure are
Jackie's and Max's.
I didn't even know Max's got specified, but I was talking about the 19-year-old.
But he's definitely older than Jackie. I think Jackie's the only one that's like in her 40s.
Jackie's in her 40s. They talk about the 19-year-old girl,
like 20s or something like that.
But even then, it's an assumption, right? Like in the idea that like. So I think it's the ATF agent mentions that De Niro and Samuel L. Jackson were in prison together 20 years ago. You have to imagine that if they're in...
No, they said that they were in prison like for 2 years together.
20 years ago. It was 2 years together 20 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yep. Okay. So, like, they do things that way that, like, force you to guess upon ages, right? So, like, as you say that you assume Samuel L. Jackson's character is in his 40s, right? Like, okay, reasonable assumption. He was old enough to serve in an adult prison 20 years ago, which makes him 18 or older 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure if Samuel L. Jackson's in his 40s in this, or if he's in his... I can't think he's in his 50s in this.
Even then, the youngest he would be 38, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
The idea is that you can have a guess on ages, but the only ones that are specified are Jackie and the 19-year-old that, like, even then I think it's ambiguous if it's the other girl you meet or if it's the third one that gets mentioned and you don't see.
Right.
I think the allure and the appeal of something. I think it speaks more to like, hey, Tarantino thinks young blonde surfer women are attractive, right? More so than the idea of like, hey, if you're into people who are younger than you, that's bad, as he writes a blaxploitation film. Right? Like, I it's hard for me to agree. I see where you're coming from, and I can't discredit it entirely, but it certainly feels like a thing that exists rather than anything with any sort of intent or meaning.
Right. I get what you're saying too, as well. It's just I've seen this movie like 3-4 times, so it's kind of like one of those movies where you see, you've seen it so many times, so you pick up other nuances,
Sure.
I guess.
I also think what calls into question that theory is the idea that like De Niro is being used to some extent by Samuel L. Jackson, right?
Right.
And the idea
right.
that like that's not an age-related thing. That's just Samuel L. Jackson's a demanding prick in this movie, right? Like,
right.
I don't know. I hear you. I can't buy in.
Hey, I totally understand that. That's why we have this podcast to discuss things and stuff, and try to make something more interesting, even if we have like such a bare bones outline.
You got any other likes, sir?
A fucking soundtrack.
Okay.
Yes, it is very, very blaxploitation, the soundtrack, but it definitely fits the movie, and also like freaking like the soul music and everything, and the funk music and stuff. Just fucking rocks.
The music is good. I think it does well as a soundtrack, and the idea that it's not distracting, right? Like, for the most part, it is background.
If anything, it just kind of like enhances the theme of the movie.
Right. I guess I almost kind of wonder that if it had a different soundtrack, right? If it wouldn't feel like such a black movie with De Niro and
right.
What's his name who played Max, right? Like, I think the music certainly helps fit that blaxploitation theme. Robert Forster. Yeah, that's it. I just couldn't come up with his name. I wanted to say Robert Redford, and I knew it wasn't right. Yeah, Forster. But yeah, I think that.
Oh wow, he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in that. Hold on, I need to actually.
He was good. That doesn't surprise me a ton. But yeah, I think
Greer
that like
was nominated for a Golden Globe Award.
That also doesn't surprise me. She was incredible in this movie, honestly. But yeah, like I said, I think the soundtrack kind of contributes to that vibe of a black movie, right? I think that it, if not for film quality, you could tell yourself that this movie was made in the 80s. Because the soundtrack like kind of fit the vibe to give you that.
Like this could have been from like the 70s for the soundtrack and everything.
Right. Like it gave you that 70s 80s black movie feel, and the soundtrack helped a lot without being in your face and forcing you to focus on it, right? If you use music that's too mainstream, you go, oh, I like this song, and then you're paying attention to the fact that song is playing, right? Where this is like, it can disappear into the background while still making noise and carry the movie forward. And it does a really good job as a soundtrack. Which
is kind of also a little ironic, like, Pam Grier, like, the beginnings of, like, her career, what made her, like, like a well-known actor was through blaxploitation films of like the 70s and 80s, and then her career tanked a bit, and then her career gets revived in a homage to blaxploitation. So it's like it seems a little typecasted, but at the same time it's kind of not, because it is definitely a different role from like typical blaxploitation, but at the same time, like, it's still there.
Absolutely. For me, I think that's it for the major likes and dislikes. You ready to rate it?
Same here. I guess it's rankings. I have my rankings: Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Yours is Flipped.
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction.
Where are we putting this?
I'm letting you go first because I still don't know. I've been thinking about this for 3 fucking days.
All right. This is number 1. I'm not gonna lie. This is typically my favorite Tarantino film, just because, like, I love how it's shot, because Tarantino films are typically shot a certain way, while this seems like how it's shot, like not like a Tarantino film. It's more of like if Tarantino made a Hollywood picture. And so to me, it seems very refreshing to see that. And on top of that, the plot's great. Like, this is like we were discussing that this is the best plot that we've seen so far in a Tarantino film. So this is number one for me so far.
It's okay. To be honest, the reason I think this is tough is it's very difficult for me to separate how much of a piece of shit it made me feel about Tarantino, right? Like,
right.
My big takeaway from the film is, God, Tarantino's a bad guy, right? Which, like, should make it last. But like you mentioned, I think it's the best plot we've seen. I think it's well written. I think it's well acted. It feels like a more complete piece than the last two, where Reservoir Dogs felt like an extended short film and Pulp Fiction felt like a weird anthology, right? Like, this is the most complete piece. I think I'm going to agree with you and put it first, but with the caveat that, like, I still felt like shit about Tarantino at the end of it. It's hard for me to put it first, but I think if I just isolate the film and ignore the fact that Tarantino's a piece of garbage, that this is the best movie so far.
I agree.
He's such a
we're now just kind of thinking to ourselves, maybe we should, like, you know, make it like themes as opposed to just directors.
Yeah, it's like I genuinely spent time after the movie yesterday Googling wholesome directors, so we didn't end up talking about how big a piece of shit these guys were.
We do have another director lined up, or we're hoping. We're not going to reveal it as of yet until we get there, just because, you know, surprises.
Yeah. Man, I can't do another piece
We're
of shit.
We're hoping
dude.
that this next director isn't.
I can't go in excited like I did for Kubrick to realize, oh my God, he's human garbage. Like, I can't do it a third time in a row.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, what do we got next week, Stallman?
Kill Bill Volume 1.
Okay. So, as always, if you're seeing this, we're still watching movies in the Discord, so feel free to come and join us and watch. We're watching on Mondays now, no longer Tuesdays like it was in the past couple of series, so come and check those out with us. Come hang out. If you've got suggestions for more directors or films you'd like to see in the future, you can always leave a comment. If you're interested in more of our content, you can hop into Cringe Crew Discord. Obviously, that's where we watch the movies, but you can come chill with us, find streams, find people to play games with, and all that fun stuff. You can catch us both on Twitch. Stallman at Traductus, myself at Ted Green Eagles. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you here next week.
See ya.